Today, we're going to talk about a story that, on the surface, starts on a simple roadside, but it quickly opens up into this massive healthcare crisis that's unfolding all across America. It's really a story about what happens when help is, well, just a few miles too far. I want you to just imagine hearing these words for a second, but not from a doctor, not from a nurse in some sterile, safe delivery room. No, you're hearing this from a 911 dispatcher over a crackling phone line while you're on your knees about to deliver your own child. And look, this isn't some hypothetical situation. This was the actual reality for Riley and Danielle Redenbaugh. It happened just this past February on a highway in Kansas. They were 30 miles away from the nearest hospital that could actually deliver their baby. 30 miles. I mean, it might as well have been 1,000. So there they are. The baby's coming. Riley, with just a voice on the phone guiding him, delivered his own daughter. And this was all captured on a sheriff's deputy's body cam. Now, they were incredibly lucky. Baby Frankie was born healthy. But their story, it really forces us to ask a tough question. What happens when the basic infrastructure for one of the most fundamental things in life just disappears? You see, what happened to the Redenbaughs wasn't just some freak accident. It's actually a symptom of a much bigger, growing problem, and it has a name: a maternity care desert. So what is that? Well, it's a county where there is zero hospitals or birthing centers offering obstetric care. No obstetric providers, nothing. And the scary part? These deserts are spreading. So let's talk scale. Just how big is this problem really? Because the story of this one family in Kansas, it's really the story of millions of people all across the country. Let's dig into the numbers. 116. Just let that number sink in. That's how many rural hospitals have either stopped delivering babies or have announced they're going to just since the end of 2020. And every single one of those closures creates this new ripple of risk for expectant mothers all around them. And here's the kicker. The problem is getting worse, and it's getting worse faster. Just look at this chart. The rate of these closures is actually accelerating. This isn't some slow leak, It feels more like the dam is breaking. Okay, so this trend has completely reshaped the national picture. A majority, we're talking 59%, of all rural hospitals in the U.S. now offer zero obstetric care. Think about that. For millions of Americans, the local hospital, the place you'd think you could go to have a baby, you just can't anymore. So, what does all this mean in the real world? Well, it means distance. Lots of it. The average travel distance to the nearest hospital that can deliver a baby has now stretched to 29 miles. That's basically the 30 miles the Redenbaughs couldn't cover in time. And the research is clear on this. Women who have to travel this far are way more likely to have a premature delivery. The distance itself becomes a huge risk factor. Okay, so the big question is, why? Why is this happening? Why are so many hospitals just shutting down their delivery rooms? Well, the answer, as it so often is, comes down to money. It's a really difficult financial equation. At its core, the problem is this brutal financial mismatch. You see, Medicaid pays for the majority of all rural births, which is great, but the reimbursement what the hospital gets paid is way, way below what it actually costs to provide the care. So for a rural hospital that's already struggling, every baby that's delivered can actually mean they lose money. So, when a hospital is in financial trouble, what's the first thing on the chopping block? It's almost always the obstetrics unit. I mean, think about it. It has high liability, it's incredibly expensive to staff 24/7, you never know how many births you're going to have, and, like we just said, the reimbursement stinks. It's literally a perfect storm of financial unsustainability. And we have to be clear about something. The consequences of this financial failure are not felt equally by everyone, not at all. Black and Indigenous women already face a huge maternal health crisis, with much higher rates of severe complications. So now, when you take away their local access to care, when you layer a maternity desert on top of these already existing problems, a high-risk situation can turn catastrophic fast. But here's the thing, where systems fail, people innovate. And in the face of this growing crisis, this whole new ecosystem has started to emerge. People are working to build bridges over the gaps that are left behind when these hospitals shut their doors. So, for example, take the non-emergency medical transportation sector, or NEMT for short. They're responding by basically creating a whole new kind of infrastructure. They're mapping out the best routes based on how long labor might take, they're training their drivers for what to do in an obstetric emergency, and they're coordinating care across different county lines. They're essentially building these logistical bridges where the physical hospitals have just vanished. And it's not just them. All kinds of other creative solutions are popping up. You've got telemedicine for remote prenatal checkups, mobile midwifery units that bring care right into communities. Now look, are these perfect replacements for a fully staffed hospital? Of course not, but they are absolute lifelines in a landscape that has fewer and fewer options every day. So all of this, the roadside births, the hospital closures speeding up, these really creative workarounds, it all brings us back to a really fundamental question about what we as a society actually value. And this quote, it just gets right to the heart of it all. Yeah, baby Frankie survived, and that's amazing. But she deserved a safe, clinical entry into the world. Her story is a massive warning sign. Every single family deserves better than a roadside birth. And so that leaves us with this final, unavoidable question. Is making sure that every person has a safe place to give birth, is that a form of infrastructure that's just as vital as our roads and our bridges? Because the answer we come up with is going to decide whether stories like the Redenbaugh become some historical footnote or just a common feature of life in America.